They're not. Oh, okay.
Maybe you couldn't get in because it wasn't live.
But then why there's so many people? But I got no sound. Did you Vuyo Wale to school who work for Ombudsman's office? He's in this short-term insurance. No sound. I thought it was half past, yeah, she told me now it's 9:30.
Good morning, everyone. I think that I am just going to give it a few minutes, probably like an additional 5 minutes, to wait for other attendees to join us, and then we will proceed with our webinar.
Morning.
And good morning again, colleagues. Good morning, everyone that is online. And as promised, 9:35, we are starting with our program for our webinar today. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for taking out time to be with us this morning. Just a few rules. Please make sure that you've got your microphone on mute at all times during the course of the webinar, and note that if you at all you have any question that you would like to ask during the course of the presentation or our session, our interactive session, the second session that we'll have, you are welcome to post them on our chat box. Now, what I would like to do is to firstly do a quick introduction and also before proceeding, just to welcome everybody and say that the reason for us to be here today is because of the financial ombud schemes that decided to come together for the first time during a Money Smart Week, for a Money Smart Week campaign, excuse me. And it is so that also to show that there is cohesion within the schemes, and also to really educate consumers. Because remember, part of our mandate as ombud schemes is to educate the public pertaining to our different services that we offer. And because our services are free of charge, it is very important that consumers know exactly when they need to come to approach an ombud office to complain, and how to then also complain to an ombud scheme. And that's why we are here today, to actually clarify it, to make it easier to understand for the consumer, and to say that basically our doors are open for you to bring your complaint to us, because not everybody can afford an attorney to assist them with any complaint they may have. So you'll know that we do have different ombud schemes within different sectors. But what I will do is that I will do a quick introduction. I'm going to ask my colleagues to quickly just switch on their mics, and I would like us to do a quick introduction of each office and the person who is representing them, and to also just give us a quick introduction really to their office, and tell us exactly what it is that their office does, the type of complaints that they deal with, so that you know exactly who you will be speaking to and what it is that each office does. So I'm going to ask that please, our presenters, if you could please switch on your mics, your mics and your cameras, excuse me, and we will do just quick introductions. And I will start with Emmanuel. I'm glad that you switched on your camera first. I will start with Emmanuel from the Banking Ombud. So he will just introduce himself and just tell us a bit about the Banking Ombud and the services that you offer.
All right. Hi, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Emmanuel. As I've been introduced, I'm an adjudicator here at the banking ombudsman. I've been adjudicator here for quite a few years now. But basically, yeah, our office, we deal with complaints pertaining to the banks. So basically services that the bank renders to customers. If there are any disputes that complainants might have in that regard, then you lodge your complaints with our offices, and then we deal with that and we handle it. Just a quick brief. We deal with all sorts of cases, so from ATM disputes all the way through to fraud cases where complainants might have suffered any form of loss directly out of their accounts. Loan agreements that complainants might have with the bank. So it's basically all the services that the bank offers within the banking suite that we deal with.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that. So basically, he was very clear on that. So you know that if at all you've got an issue with a bank, never think that you are too small to take up your complaint against whatever it is that they did to you. Just go to the banking ombudsman, because really they are legal heads that know exactly how to deal with the banks. So now I'm going to move over to the next office, which is the office of the credit ombud. And I think that we've got two speakers representing the office of the credit ombud. If you can just switch on your cameras, introduce yourself, and also tell us a little about exactly what the credit ombud does.
Good morning, colleagues. Thank you very much for attending this webinar this morning. So I am Avitha Nofel. I'm with the Credit Ombud for just over 10 years, and I'm in the Complaints Dispute Resolution Department. So very briefly, the services of the Credit Ombud Office is ultimately to investigate disputes relating to non-bank credit agreement matters. Now, this could relate to any number of type of complaints, from your simple requests for a paid-up letter on your outstanding account, or it could relate to something similar to a statement of account query, garnishee orders, which we use the term quite colloquially because it's actually an emolument attachment order. Then a second type of dispute that we would deal with would relate to credit information matters. And this would ultimately entail disputes relating to a consumer's credit information at the credit bureau, but we'll provide more input about those different types of complaints later on in the session. Just to know that our services are free of charge, and as with the intent behind an ombud scheme, our entire process of investigation is done from an impartial, non-statutory association perspective. So that's just a quick brief. I'm going to hand over to Jabulo, my colleague from the Credit Ombud Office.
Thank you so much, Avi, and good morning to everyone. I think you've summed up everything that we do in our office quite nicely. So my name is Njabulo Bembe, and I'm a legal advisor at the Credit Ombud. So all that Avita has just encapsulated is what I deal with. I deal with the complaints that come to our office, and I deal with investigations and coming to a fair outcome, an impartial outcome in terms of both consumers and the credit industry alike. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you for that. And so I will quickly just move on to the FAIS Ombud. I think that a lot of people, I know that I've struggled quite a lot where I never know whether to say it's FAIS Ombud or FAIS Ombud. So maybe you could clarify that for us, Mashita, this morning. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Kabelo. My name is Mashite, as introduced. I'm a case manager at the FAIS Ombuds office. You are correct. And whichever way you call it, it is basically what it means is that it's the office of the Ombud for financial services providers. So some people, they like using the long name, but otherwise, in short, FAIS Ombud. I think that will do. And yeah, this office was established in terms of the FAIS Act. Obviously, we operate within this act, and there's proceedings. We deal with complaints impartially. Our services are free of charge as well, like any other ombudsman in this panel. And we deal with the complaints that generally relates to the advice that is rendered by the what we generally call the brokers, financial advisors, or financial planners. We find many of them in the banks. We find them, they may be independent financial advisors. Some of them are tied to the financial institutions as employees. So we deal with anything that has to do with any type of negligence that may happen. In this theme of this Money Smart Week, we say many things can go wrong in the advice. So the types of complaints that we generally deal with is when it comes to funeral policies, claims that are rejected due to the advice that you have received from the broker or the agents. Sometimes we call them agents that sell these policies. It could be about increased premiums that maybe you were not notified of, or any changes in terms and conditions, it is important to know who the underwriter is. We deal with the recommendations for medical aid. It could be about credit life insurance, many other financial products that you may come across in the whole spectrum of financial services. We will dwell much deeper into all these things later on in our discussions. I hope everybody understands now what is basically, in short, we police advice. Thank you, Kabelo.
Lovely. I like that. So, in other words, if you are sitting at a high tea with your girlfriends and they say, girl, there is this pyramid scheme, you can actually invest 200 and in the next 2 weeks you'll get 20,000. But because they're not registered, we can't come to you, can we?
Yeah, it depends.
Right.
Like you say, if they are not registered, it really that kind of a complaint, it sounds more of a criminal in nature. So
I like that.
yeah,
I
but
like
otherwise,
that.
we know that in this country there's a lot of this kind of things going on. So you can come to our office and inquire as to what kind of help you can receive, and then we'll be able to look at your situation and give you a more clearer answer as to whether we can be able to help you or not. Because like as you say, pyramid scheme sounds more of something that clearly you just have to go straight to the police and you get a better help there.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Mashite. We appreciate it. And then I will move over then to the insurance ombudsman. I will start with the long-term insurance. Vuyo, over to you to just do a quick introduction and of the office. You are muted, ma'am. Thank you. You may proceed. Okay,
Can
Vuyo,
you now?
oh,
Can
lovely.
you
Now
now?
we can hear you.
All
Yes.
right. Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Cabello. My name is Violet Tuscolo. I am the Assistant Ombudsman from the Office of the Long-Term Insurance. The Ombudsman for Long-Term Insurance is an independent office which is accountable to the Ombudsman Council. We resolve disputes arising between the complainants, arising in terms of long-term insurances. When we speak about long-term insurance, we speak about life policies, funeral policies, credit life, disability, health, and investment policies. Our services is free to complainants. You don't pay a cent, and you don't need a legal representative to assist you to lodge your complaint through our office. We offer an independent and objective forum. Complainants may still decide to go to court if they are not happy about our ruling, but our rulings are binding to the insurers. Our rules provide an informal appeal process. In order to achieve our mission, we follow an informal process which is easily accessible and cost-effective, unlike the dragging of the court law process. We take equity and fairness into account. We can request an insurer to consider the claim based on fairness, even though they are entitled to decline the claim contractually, but we can use our equity or fairness jurisdiction. We may also award compensation for material inconvenience, distress, or financial loss suffered by complainant, irrespective of the ruling that has been made by our office. That is basically what our office does. Thank you so much.
I love the point that you mentioned. Thank you so much for the fact that you don't need legal representation to approach an ombud office, and that applies to all the ombud offices. So you, as a consumer who does not have an attorney, can literally just approach the officers, the officers of the Ombud officers directly. So I'm glad that you actually mentioned that point. And then I will move over to our last Ombud office, which is the short-term insurance or the non-life insurer ombudsman. Sorry, I tried to get it right, Peter, but you will correct me there. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Kabelo. Our name is still the Ombudsman for Short-Term Insurance, Kabelo. Perhaps just to clarify what Kabelo is referring to, with developments, we are now moving away from calling the area of practice that our industry is involved in, instead of continuing to call it short-term insurance, we have started calling it non-life insurance. So Vuyo just spoke, and she's speaking from the perspective of long-term insurance, also known as life insurance, and we would concentrate on non-life. And by non-life insurance, we are essentially referring to your most common sorts of insurance, your motor insurance. Lots of people have got cell phones, your cell phone insurance, your home owner's insurance, your household contents insurance, small businesses. Credit life was mentioned. We also deal with those. We also deal with some commercial type of policies, and our office essentially deals with disputes between insurance companies and their own clients. So if you've got a complaint against somebody else, but not your own insurer, where you pay a premium on a monthly basis, you would not be in a position to complain against that company. We basically pursue or investigate complaints in the same manner as the other offices have mentioned, so I will not bore you with a repetition of those things. Perhaps what I would like to add is that unlike the long-term insurance ombudsman, we cannot as yet, and I emphasize as yet because I think Leanne and them are considering giving us additional powers, where in future we'll also be able to award compensation for things that people may have suffered as a result of improper handling or unfair handling of their matters by their insurers. And I think I'll keep it short. We will continue chatting further as we continue with the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nkuna. I loved what you said, because it is leading us then to our next presenter and our speaker as well, Ms. Leanne Jackson, because you mentioned that there are certain developments within the financial ombud space. And what I would like to do is to hand over to Leanne, and don't think that as the ombud officers we just stand alone, but we do have an overseer, a body that oversees the ombud schemes, and that would be the Ombud Council. So I don't want to take away from what Leanne will be saying. So I will immediately just hand over to Leanne so that she can just advise us and tell us exactly what the Ombud Council does and what does it mean really for the consumer. Thank you, and over to you, Leanne.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to be with you. Great to be with the fellow panelists. And good to have a reminder from everyone of what the schemes do. There's a slide presentation where I'll just talk through a little bit about the Ombud Council, but just to say that today is about the Ombud schemes and what they do, and much less about the Ombud Council itself. But what the Ombud Council does is it's a statutory body, a regulator in effect, and we're responsible for overseeing all the ombud schemes you just spoke to, as well as one or two schemes that are not on the panel today. That includes the pension funds adjudicator and the pension space, and the scheme for the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. But really the role of the Ombud Council, and this is a summary of our mandating legislation, assist financial customers to have access to affordable, effective, independent, and fair alternative dispute resolution. And that's what Ombud schemes are there to do. And in summary, the Ombud Council's job is to make sure that the Ombud system actually works for financial customers. Pleased to note that I'm participating in this panel in that capacity, not as an Ombud scheme. The Ombud Council is not a scheme itself. We do not handle customer complaints ourselves. That is the job of the people you've been hearing from before me. That is the job of the Ombud schemes. In fact, if the council were to intervene in trying to deal with complaints directly or in reviewing or reconsidering the decisions of one of the ombuds, that would be a breach of our mandate, because part of our job is to ensure and respect the independence of the ombud schemes. So if you are unhappy with the decision that an ombud scheme makes, the Ombud Council can't assist you in having that decision appealed or overridden. That's not what we're here for. But what we can do is investigate if for any reason you feel that the general way in which you've been treated by the Ombud scheme, the way they've run their operations, flaws in their governance, the way they've applied their own governing rules, if you feel there's something problematic in that regard, then by all means speak to the Ombud Council. But please don't think of us as a forum for submitting your complaint or escalating your complaint to. If we can then just move on to the next slide. What's more important today is to talk about your rights as a financial customer rather than oversight of the system. I think it's really, really important for financial customers to understand that you have a right to be treated fairly by the financial institutions you deal with. And that includes all the financial sectors that the schemes have spoken about today: the banking sector, the insurers, long-term and short-term, or life and non-life, credit providers, financial advisors, and retirement funds, etc. You are entitled to insist on fair treatment, and you're entitled to complain if you don't get it. If you're not being treated fairly, you have a right to complain. And smart people know how to complain smartly. So it's really important. What I'm so pleased to participate in this session today, to enable the Ombud schemes to be able to explain how they can help you. I think part of the trick with complaining is to understand what unfair treatment means. Now, we all instinctively know when we've been treated unfairly, but it's quite difficult to put that into words. I think sometimes we, as consumers, we feel a bit embarrassed about being treated unfairly. We think, I've got to find some legal arguments. I've got to find a breach of contract. Otherwise, I'm just going to sound like I'm whining. And then we either just suck it up and accept the unfair treatment, or we get incredibly angry and resort to going wild on social media, etc. And I think what's important is the Ombud schemes can play a really constructive role in helping you complain properly. So what are these unfair treatment areas you can complain about? It's not just a vague, nebulous thing that, oh, you're just unfair to me. In the financial sector laws, there's a concept of TCF, or treating customers fairly, and that requires financial institutions to meet certain specific outcomes. It's not just a vague concept of be nice. And some of the examples of things you are entitled to complain about are what I've tried to list on this slide. So if you believe that the financial institution you're dealing with, and as I say, that's insurers, banks, advisors, credit providers, retirement funds, etc. If you feel that the product or service they've given you simply isn't designed to meet your needs, it's an inappropriately structured product or service, or it does not perform, you were led to expect that it's going to do certain things for you, deliver certain results, and it seems that it's not doing so, that is unfair treatment. It is also unfair treatment to be provided with unclear, inaccurate, misleading information, including advertising and marketing material. So if your financial institution isn't giving you the information you need at the time you need it, in a form that you can understand and that's appropriate to you, that is also unfair treatment. Unsuitable financial advice is a very particular form of unfair treatment, and that's where the FACE Ombud in particular comes in. Advice is supposed to take into account your needs and be appropriate to your needs. And if it's not, that is considered unfair. And just simple shoddy customer service is also something you have the right to complain about. If you've been messed around and the financial institution is not treating you with the respect you deserve as a customer, that in itself is also a basis for being able to complain. Another important ground of being able to complain, and all of these, other than, I suppose, advice, which is quite specific, but all of these apply across all of the financial sectors. So if, for example, the entity you're dealing with is really putting obstacles in your way and making it difficult for you to, whether it's to submit a claim on an insurance policy or to just access your money or your benefits or the funds in your account, if it's to make changes to your financial product, you realize that you need to tweak things a little bit and your needs have changed slightly and you want to make some changes to the product, or even to complain. It's also not okay for a financial institution to make it difficult for you to complain about them. And then, this is, again, these are some pointers as to specific things you can highlight in your complaint to make sure that it's really understood by the Ombud scheme. But this is not a closed list. Generally, don't feel that you have to really dig around to have a good reason to complain. Otherwise, you're going to be seen to be a whiner. If you just have a sense that there's been fundamental unfair treatment in the outcomes you've experienced dealing with it, give it a go, give the Ombud system a try. That is what those schemes are there for. So if we can just jump ahead then. Some of this you've already heard from before. I'm going to drill down into some of these points again. That the beauty of dealing with the Ombud system is it's free, it's accessible, it's impartial and independent, and it's fundamentally is reliable. Not saying no one ever makes a mistake in an Ombud scheme, but it's pretty much a system that generally works very well. And I think a point that was maybe mentioned by one or two of the speakers earlier, but that is really important, is that Ombuds have what is called an equity mandate, which is a legalistic way of saying that an Ombud doesn't only have to look at, they absolutely have to take into account the law and they have to take into account the contract you signed, but they are not exclusively limited to that in dealing with your complaint. They're entitled to look and are required to look generally at all the circumstances and say what would be, over and above the small print, what would be a fair outcome to your complaint. And this is a distinct advantage of the Ombud system that doesn't always apply when you have to work, if you need to resort to the formal legal system or the courts. So if we can just continue, and I can just drill down into some of these. So you've heard from all the schemes, there is no charge to have an Ombud help you with your complaint. And this is so important. None of us have got loads of, or very few of us have got loads of spare money lying around at the moment, and complaining is hard work at the best of times. You have to put effort into constructing a proper complaint to have it heard, and the last thing you need is for it to still have a cost to you. The Ombud system is free. It will not cost you a cent to submit your complaint. It's also accessible. The different schemes have slightly different channels, but in the main, all of the schemes can be contacted telephonically, email, online. They've mostly got social media presences as well and links that you're able to use. And importantly, once you make that initial contact with the scheme, they will then have instructions either on their websites or over the phone, or even some of them have walk-in facilities to help you formulate a complaint and help you submit the complaint. They're not going to make your complaint for you because they need to be objective, but they can help ask you some probing questions to help you set the complaint out in a way that will make sense and that will enable them to try and mediate with the financial institution. The schemes will also try to help you in any South African language, and which is, of course, important. The other point that has been made, you don't need a lawyer to deal with an Ombud scheme. Most of the schemes employ legally qualified people, but not in a legalistic sense. They're there to informally help you get your complaint resolved if they at all can. So as a result, the processes that they follow are much less rigid, much more flexible than having to go through the court system, which anyone who's even attempted litigation knows that besides the cost, the sheer bureaucracy of it and the processes you have to go to are incredibly difficult to navigate your way around and frankly impossible to do without professional advice. That is not the case with the Ombud scheme. The impartiality point is really important too. The Ombud can't pick sides. They really have to objectively look at you. And it doesn't mean they're always going to pick your side. They're not always going to side with the consumer. They have to objectively look at the complaint and the financial institution's response and come to a conclusion as to what is fair in all the circumstances. But having said that, the Ombud schemes understand that 99 times out of 100, the complainant is the little guy. And they know that you're not in a fair bargaining position and there's not a bad level playing field between you and the resources of most of the financial institutions that are on the other side of the complaint. So the Ombud schemes are there to help strike that balance, to just make sure that even though you are the David against the Goliath of the financial institution, your complaint is going to get weight and be taken seriously, notwithstanding the imbalance of resources and expertise. The existing Ombud schemes also really have a very solid track record. They've all been in place for many years and have helped many thousands of customers. These schemes are established. They've been there, they've been around for a long time. And as mentioned, they are overseen by the Ombud Council. So they don't just, even the industry schemes, although they are voluntarily established by their industry sectors, they've got very rigorous governance requirements in place to make sure that their decision-making remains completely independent of the sectors which they operate in and the financial institutions that were involved in their initial founding many years ago. And that's not only by choice, they're actually obliged to have these independence and governance place, and that is overseen. Their governance is overseen by the Ombud Council. Their rules, their structures, their funding models, all of those are approved by the Ombud Council, which then grants legal recognition to an industry scheme before it is allowed to operate. And it is impermissible for any organization to call itself an Ombud scheme or set itself up as an Ombud scheme without having gone through that recognition process. So that's just an additional layer of comfort. The other thing that a lot of people don't realize is that where the industry schemes are concerned, so, and again here, I'm emphasizing the schemes that are with us today, the industry schemes being the two insurance schemes, the banks and the banking scheme and the credit ombud. The financial institutions in those sectors are actually obliged to join the scheme. So when you deal with a bank, a credit provider, or an insurer, I really recommend that you confirm with them that they are indeed members of the Ombud scheme and insist that they provide you, if at any point things go wrong, that they provide you with the contact details of the Ombud scheme that they fall under so that you can escalate complaint. Always start with the financial institution first, give their own internal system a chance, follow whatever they say are their complaint channels. But if that does not work, make sure that they put you in touch with the Ombud scheme. In the case of financial advisors and retirement funds, we've got the two statutory schemes where it's not a question of financial advisors or retirement funds choosing to be members of the schemes. They just automatically are by law because those schemes are created by statute. But the point of the message I'm trying to get across here is that there's quite a strong underlying regulatory and statutory framework to ensure that the Ombud system does indeed work as optimally can. There's always room for improvement, and there's all sorts of legislation underway being in development to make the system even stronger. But there's certainly a strong underpin to the functioning of all of these schemes. And I think that was the main message I wanted to get across. And now back to the the people of the day, which are the schemes themselves and the work that they do. Thank you for your time.
Oh, Leanne, thank you so much for, I think that even for somebody like myself who has been working for the Credit Ombud for such a long time, I mean, it's been over 10 years, but I love that acronym that you used for FAIR, and that is that, and I think that it stood out for me because that is really the gist or the essence of what the Ombud schemes are about. And that is that we are free, we are accessible, impartial, and reliable. I mean, I always say that basically we are the relationship therapist, really, when it comes to the financial industry. I mean, if at all, we are there to repair basically the relationship between the consumer as well as the financial institution. So if at all the two of you are just butting heads, then you know that, wait a minute, but there is the Ombud office that I can approach, and they will be able to look at both parties and the facts that they are both providing, and to say then what would be a fair outcome for both parties. I absolutely love that. And I think that we are going to actually then use that as part of our social media campaign for that acronym of fairness. So thank you very much for that, Leanne. And now we move on to the second part of our webinar, the reason why we are here, and that is for Money Smart Week. Now, Money Smart Week, just to quickly explain what it is that where there is a committee named the National Committee for Financial Education. The National Consumer Financial Education Committee. My apologies for that. And it is chaired by the National Treasury. Now, the main point and the reason why there is the Money Smart Week is because we think and we know, in fact, that the importance of financial education and raising financial awareness. A lot of people, a lot of consumers do not know their rights. A lot of consumers do not know what is available out there for them when it comes to financial education or consumer education. So then we are running Money Smart Week to say that, you know what, know that these are the institutions of different financial institutions, then sign up to be part of the Money Smart Week South Africa. And it has been running from the 28th of August and will end on the 3rd of September. And now what happens is that if a consumer wants to find out, maybe you want to know about insurance, then you go onto the Money Smart Week website and you can simply just check on the activity list, who is posting where, who is being interviewed where, so that you can listen in and actually then get educated. Because sometimes when people think about financial education, they think you need money for somebody to advise you when it comes to finances. But we are giving this platform then to financial institutions to say that, show us what you have got, show us how you are educating the public when it comes to financial services that the public makes use of on a daily basis, really, and how exactly then can you educate them as best as you can. Now, with the theme for Money Smart Week for this year is plan your money, plant your future. And we asked the different Ombud schemes to say that exactly how do we fit in this theme to what each and every office does. And what I will do then is that I will ask then my panelists to please have their cameras on, because now we are going to discuss and we are going to have an interactive session. And please, if you have a question, a query, anything, a comment, you are welcome to make use of that chat box so that you can just post all of your queries and comments on there. And what I will do is that I will ask each office or each presenter to state how their office has taken this theme, and by actually mentioning what it is that we have in our bubbles, to say, how are you guys then incorporating the theme to what the office does? And I will start with the banking ombud. I'm not honestly, I'm really doing this because you're doing everything in alphabetical order so that there is some order to it all. I'm not picking on you, Emmanuel. So
No
I
worries,
will
nah.
start. I will start with you then. Please just let us know how is the Ombudsman for Banking Services really then linking their services to our theme for Money Smart Week, Plan Your Money, Plant Your Future.
All right. So as I mentioned earlier, we deal with complaints that that in relation to basically all the services that that the banks offer, and I think one of the trends or one of the areas that we've identified that types of cases that we face is in the fraud space. So we face a lot of fraud, and just in the spirit of focusing on raising awareness to the importance of planning one's financial finances for the future, is it doesn't matter how well planned you are, if the place where your money is being kept is if you're not aware of the perils that you face in that space, then all your planning could be derailed. And so so fraud's definitely one of the areas that we've identified as quite prevalent with all the types of complaints that we deal with mostly in our offices. And the various ones. There's mobile banking fraud, there's phishing, there's scams, where people are duped into depositing funds into to a fraudster, card not present transactions. There are various things. And earlier on, Leanne mentioned, that we have an equity mandate, and part of that, part of our process, we have identified, those that we've termed, vulnerable consumers, who, due to various reasons are susceptible, to these fraudsters. And so because of that, there are, certain considerations that we factor in when we are making our determinations and whatnot. And we obviously look at it on a case by case basis, but that's also there. So yeah, if there's any questions around that type of fraud, it's quite broad. There's various types that the ways that people are duped into losing their money. But if there's any questions around that, I'll be happy to be kind of guided into which area to focus on if I get a specific question in that space.
No, thank you for that, because now you mentioned fraud, and I love the fact that you mentioned fraud and the fact that no matter how well you may plan for your future, like we are always encouraged, especially when you've gotten a financial advisor, somebody will say no, but you can invest your money, you can have make sure that you've got insurance for you've got insurance as well when it comes to your vehicle, your home, and everything. And this leads me now. I mean, I'm gonna jump. I was supposed to go to credit, but I'm gonna jump to the insurance guys now, and I want to find out when it comes then to scams specifically. And I think that between Peter and Vuyo, if one of you could just then tell us more then when it comes to securing. Now we've got the scams, securing then what you've already invested. How are you then speaking to this and also incorporate what Emmanuel just mentioned? How are you incorporating then the services of the insurance ombudsman or with the Plan Your Money, Plant Your Future?
I'll take that, Kabelo. Thank you. I always think of money as automatically related to the future. And if you can just pause there for a moment, you will see what I mean by that. If I gave you money now, the only value that you would derive from it would be in relation to what you can do with that money in the future. The past second that just went by makes my money irrelevant because the moment has gone. But it's the next thing that I can do with the money that is relevant. And that is essentially why the slogan or the theme that we are following this year is quite pertinent in that the insurance world is focused on the future. We say an insurance contract is a promise made by the insurance company to you, the consumer, in terms of which they say, should a particular adverse event happen in the future, we will come to relieve you of your financial loss. And in exchange for that, you pay a premium. And that way, you are minimizing risks relating to the future. And from our perspective, when you make that plan, when you buy that insurance product, you are already providing for the future, because it's only going to come to assist you in the future. And therefore, you are planting a seed so that something grows out of it, and in the future, you reap something. Thank you.
Love that. And I want to move over to Mashite, because now this also then speaks to it. So I'm safeguarding my future, right? And I'm saying, okay, yes, I've got all of the products that I need, and I'm secure now. Now I'm relaxed, because I'm thinking, no, I probably I've got my insurance, so should anything happen, then I am protected. But how can this go wrong? Then all of a sudden, when I think that I'm protected, then comes an issue, and then all of a sudden I'm like, but wait, I thought I was protected. When I put in my claim, I thought that no, it's covered, I am done, I just need to fill out a few documents, and then that's it. How can this then go? How can this get messed up, really, in the future, should I then want to put in a claim, and all because somebody just gave me the wrong advice, or probably I didn't understand when they were giving me the advice? So how are you then, as the FICE Ombud, saying that no, this is how you plan your money and plant your future?
Thank you, Kabelo. A lot of things can go wrong in that process. That's why financial advice is very, very, very important. It's key to all this. Realizing what Peter was talking about, these promises, it's all about the advice. If you received the proper advice, you should be able to realize your financial dreams or your financial plans. But a lot of things can go wrong. And that's why we have the FICE Ombud, whereby if you find yourself in this kind of a situation whereby something somewhere was not done correctly, there has been some sort of negligence, or there has been misleading information that you have received from your financial advisor. And then the FICE Ombud can assist you in trying to untangle that kind of a problem. And I'm going to be very, very honest with you and go straight into real cases that we deal with on daily basis. Because we see people, financial futures being ruined, and sometimes a bad advice can leave you destitute. The retirement that you have been planning for all your working life it becomes a miserable life that you did not actually plan to have, and because of a bad advice. So that is why it is very, very important to actually make sure that you receive a good advice. So while I'm talking about the retirement, a lot of things can go wrong there. Most of the complaints that we receive, we find that retirees, when they get to that stage, not everybody understands the financial language, or the language that is being used by these financial advisors. But it is very, very important that every time when you meet with financial advisors, you take your time, you read the documentation. We know that this is the part that many people don't like doing. It's like you look at a whole lot of papers that they are going to put in front of you and having to read all that. But it is important. It is your money. And you need to make time to read this documentation before you sign it, because you never know what you're signing. Sometimes they say you may be signing your life away. It is true, because generally many of the complaints that we receive as the Vice Ombud, we find that people just signed without reading the documentation. They've been told that this will give you this, but the documentation that they are signing is not what it is. For example, you find that someone was in a pension scheme at work, whereby they could have been able to take the money, that sufficient amount of money upfront before they transfer the money to an annuity, to a financial institution that can give them an annuity product, which may be a living annuity or a life annuity that they can earn an income from. But they could have been able to withdraw money to settle their debts. But they have been told that you maybe misleading information that you can still do that next year or when you feel like you want more money, and only to find that later on they cannot do that anymore, and they're still having debts in their life at retirement age, that they cannot be able to meet those obligations anymore. And it is difficult now that the law does not allow them to access that money, to make a withdrawal, a lump sum withdrawal. And now they have to find ways and means to ask money from family members and so forth and so forth. So that is why I stress the point that it is important to read. Take time, read the documentation. If it is possible, don't sign immediately right there and there. Take the documentation home and read them with maybe one of your family members that you know that they know things, and then they can read and also explain certain things. Or what's wrong with maybe asking for a second opinion? Because this is very serious. These decisions, they are very serious in such a way that they may affect your financial future. I mean, I can talk about a whole lot of things, cases that we come across, that we see. For example, there's another case, as you are talking about the issues of scams. You mentioned it many times. A classical example that I can give you, whereby the Vice Ombud will assist you still, is that you go to a financial advisor at the bank, knowing and trusting the brand behind the bank and the person. Maybe it has been your financial advisor for many years, and they now suddenly say your money is not performing very well where we have put it last time. Let's move it to this other institution, but it's outside of the bank. It might work better, only to find that it's just a pyramid scheme. Yes, you can approach the Vice Ombud about that kind of a complaint, and the Vice Ombud will be able to investigate and try and assist you in recovering your money. Obviously, that is because of a bad financial advice that you would have received from a reputable financial services provider. So a Vice Ombud does have jurisdiction in that instances. So let me go to something else that we generally come across. I mean, me and you, everybody has got a cell phone. And many times we obtain these cell phones, not buying them cash, but we know that we walk into a cell phone shop and you take a cell phone contract. And all they ask you right at the end of taking that cell phone, you are excited about how the phone looks and all that. And all that they ask is that, okay, the value of this is this phone is this much. Do you want insurance, a device insurance? And right there and there, they tell you, oh, it's just gonna be this much added to the your cell phone contract. And then you say yes. and you are being told nothing about the material terms that comes with that device insurance. And many times people are caught up in situations whereby there's a clause in there, generally is referred to as a SIM card clause. The SIM card clause, essentially what it means is that the contract SIM card that you use to purchase the contract and the device insurance must always be in the cell phone device at all times. So because this is never explained upfront, generally what they do, they send you a copy of the terms and conditions later on, or sometimes they send you a link in which you must click and open to read the terms and conditions, which would contain a whole lot of information that many people, but it is the code of conduct that requires that before you sell a financial product to a customer, you need to give the customer a disclose material information that may affect the decision of a customer in buying that financial product. So by not disclosing this material information to a customer, because you find situations whereby maybe the customer would have realized that I'm not going to use this SIM card in this device. So therefore, it means that this insurance will not be suitable for me. So they would have made a different decision then, but they've been robbed of making such a decision because this was never explained. So these are types of complaints that we would come in and try and assist.
In what you have discussed, you literally mentioned the bank, and you mentioned the access for short-term or non-life insurance. And I want Peter and Emmanuel to also then just tell us. And before I continue, ladies and gentlemen, please do know that this session is recorded. I do not want tomorrow for you guys to go to the information regulator and say I did not mention that. There's the disclaimer, it's out there. So, but and this is where I want, because I think that for a consumer, a layman, and thinking that I've got this issue, and especially if at all it's advice from my own bank, and then after that I'm like, I'm gonna go and approach the banking ombudsman to assist me with this matter. And what I want to find out now, and not only to highlight the 3 offices, but I want to find out then, how do you know when to approach the banking, when it's just a banking matter, or when do I then say that, but this for this specific portion, I can approach the face ombud? And I will ask that Emmanuel answers first, and then Peter also answer in terms of the short-term insurance as well.
All right. So for questions, for complaints of this nature, we generally we'll have a look at it and approach it by looking at the the contract and the advice information sheet that's the financial service provider would have concluded with the complainant. And if we come to determination, we generally inform the complainants that if that's unsatisfied with our findings or what we've done, they're at liberty to then approach the phase ombud to deal with it. If they're unhappy, we don't want to just send them away as well, because I understand that they've come to us because they're frustrated. So we will try and assist as best as we can using the legal principles that we know and apply it to those sort of facts. But if they're unsatisfied, then they're at liberty to approach the phase ombud.
Lovely. And then with Peter, if you can answer in terms of short-term insurance.
I think I want to take things back a little bit. The important thing, and perhaps this also speaks to Leanne's presentation, one of the reasons why we are collaborating and the future of the ombudsman landscape is one that gets all the ombudsmen working together, is exactly to ensure that there are no cracks in the system where somebody has a complaint, but they don't know where to go. Or when they do go to this place, they are told, no, we are not able to assist you, go somewhere else. They go there, that other office says go somewhere else, and that becomes a bit of a schlep for the consumer, and some of them end up getting tired and just giving up on the complaint. So part of what is happening is that there is a consolidation, so that if you approached our office and we did our own little investigation and we could assist you only to a certain extent, we will do so. And beyond that, if we realize that there is some additional assistance you may require, your complaint could then be forwarded to the Vice Ombuds Office, to the Banking Ombuds Office, to the Credit Ombuds Office, because sometimes you find that these complaints are intertwined. There could be an aspect that relates to the giving of advice, which would fall beyond our jurisdiction. There could then also be an element that relates to some banking services. For example, let's say it came as a complaint, a claims complaint in the context of insurance. But when we look at the issues, the reason why something went wrong was because the consumer's banker did not process the debit order as it ought to. And as a result of that, premiums were not paid, and this person's policy was not in force at the time. So we might then suggest go to the banking ombudsman, because it looks like there might be an issue for the bank to respond to. Sometimes we will ourselves forward the complaint there to assist. And I just want to also touch on very important points that Mashite mentioned earlier on. We must always, as consumers, understand that these are contractual relationships that we have between ourselves and the financial institutions. And therefore, the terms and conditions that he was referring to, that would come in the form of a link or a booklet or whatever package, are important for us to go through, make sure that we understand what rights and obligations we have there. And more importantly, then be compliant. So if your contract requires you to pay a monthly premium in the context of an insurance policy, please do so, because if you don't do so, you might not enjoy the benefits that your policy offers. And then there's going to be an issue. You may end up having to come to our offices to assist you. And some of these things are things that can be easily avoided by just being familiar with the terms and conditions of your contract, being compliant, and therefore making sure that you then end up enjoying the benefits of the plans that you put into place to make sure that you have a better financial future. That can only be realized if you comply, if you understand, and all of these can happen if you have started off by reading your policy to start off with. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Rio, I see that your hand is up. Could you also just switch on your camera? And I'm going to ask that for the rest of the presenters as well. If we could have everybody just switch on their cameras, it would be great. Now, Vuyo, you may go ahead and speak in terms of the long-term insurance when it comes again to our topic.
Okay. Just to add to what has already been said, Kabelo, with regards to taking out and some hints that we can give to consumers when they are taking out a policy of insurance. It's always important to complete the application form yourself. Also to provide complete and accurate information. Also, if you are in doubt, just make sure you disclose everything, just to avoid problems when it's time to claim, when they will say you were supposed to disclose this and you did not disclose that. Also, very important, you must always read the document before you sign it. Make sure you understand the terms and conditions that you are entering into. Also, make sure that this is the product that you want. Also, they need to keep track or record of the underwriter or the financial advisor that has assisted them. If they are assisted by a financial advisor, they must make sure they request to see the license, just to avoid the scams and the illegal operators. That's just a hint I wanted to give to the consumers.
I like that point that you have made, because then it doesn't only apply when it comes to insurance, but also when it comes to credit. And now I am going to just rope in the credit ombud right now, and ask either Avitha or Njabulo to just clarify exactly how important is then full disclosure when it comes to a credit agreement as well. I mean, like we said, the theme is plan your money, plant your future. How is it relevant when it comes to credit? I'll start with Avitha, and then Jabulo, you can follow thereafter.
Thanks, Kabelo. I think this is an extremely important point, and I've heard from the other officers about ultimately caveat subscriptor. Now, what that ultimately means is that when signing an agreement, it is accepted that the person signing that agreement has agreed to those terms and conditions, regardless of whether they actually understood or they've read them. Now, we know from a credit perspective, when consumers approach the Credit Ombud office, invariably they have not read that agreement and they do not understand the terms and conditions of that agreement. So therefore, Money Smart Week South Africa is so important in that their intent is to bring financial literacy to consumers. But how does this actually pan out? What we have found over the last few years at the Credit Ombud again is that there has to be a teachable moment. Consumers will again not necessarily appreciate that there is an issue on their credit agreement. That issue will only come to the fore in the event that they wish to apply for credit, for example, at another institution, and suddenly they find that there is adverse information appearing on his or her credit profile. Now, what does this mean? Because of certain affordability guidelines that have been issued in terms of the National Credit Act, for example, the consumer's credit profile needs to be looked at. If there's adverse information sitting on that consumer's profile, the chances are that being one of the criteria considered in the affordability calculations by the new credit provider, that consumer would possibly be declined credit. So again, it goes back to the issue of how much information and financial literacy does that consumer have? So we go on these webinars, on the workshops that Kabelo, you actually perform on behalf of the Credit Ombud Office, trying to instill this financial education to consumers. And I think that to a large extent, with financial education being something that should form part of a skills development moving forward from childhood into adolescence and into adulthood, that would give us an opportunity to improve the education levels of South Africans in the country. But again, the importance of looking at what is in the agreement is by far extremely important. The chances are, as we've seen over the years, that consumers do not necessarily read those agreements. We would be approached to deal with a complaint that that consumer may have. Now, I don't want to usurp the question, and I'll give Jabulo an opportunity, but I think it would be also beneficial just to discuss one or two items in terms of the type of complaints that come through to the Credit Ombud, but I'll leave that for you, Kabelo. Thank you.
Over to you, Njabulo. Would you like to perhaps add to that?
Thank you. I think all of the colleagues raised important points in terms of firstly the awareness perspective, in terms of saying that weeks like Money Smart are very essential in giving consumers awareness in terms of their rights, but also importantly, as Peter mentioned, their obligations. So consumers need to understand that, like it was said in the beginning, our officers are impartial and objective. So when a consumer comes to us, yes, we do understand there's some unequal bargaining powers, but we need to look at the facts objectively. We need to look at the contract, and we need to look at all the factors in evaluating and assessing complaints. And, you know, in some instances, you find a consumer saying, no, but there's unfairness in this contract in terms of ABC. So I've stopped paying the contract altogether because I felt aggrieved at what was happening. And we're always at pains to advise that even though you've laid a complaint with any office, including our office, the consumer needs to continue with their obligations until such time that there has been that finding or conclusion to say that, yes, we agree that maybe there has been some unfairness, or if we find that there has not been any unfairness and the contract was run according to the relevant legislation, the consumer doesn't find themselves having neglected their obligations and now finding that their account is in arrears. Also, speaking to what Avitha mentioned in terms of how contracts are run and, for example, affordability assessment, we had a case whereby a consumer came to us with their credit information and said that they had an offer of credit. They had rejected, the credit provider had rejected their application. And the credit provider needs to provide reasons. So the reasons provided by the credit provider were that the consumer had no financial history. So this was an elderly consumer in about their 50s, if I'm not mistaken. So when they got to our office, we found that in their credit report, it was completely blank. So he explained that he was a businessman, so most of his purchases are dealt with in cash. So that led to him not having to require any credit. And the reason given for the credit provider, because he wanted to purchase a vehicle, was that we do not have any debt repayment history of this consumer. And this is why we did not extend any credit. So it goes back to that we are always trying to educate young people that build a good credit score and buy on credit, you know, so that you have that debt repayment history. But now we also find that elderly people on the other side of the spectrum who maybe have worked and have accumulated some wealth or income do not necessarily need to use credit as often. But then you find when they do need to apply for credit, like in this instance, you have a credit report that has absolutely zero credit information. And as you know, that credit information is there for a period of 5 years, which means that the credit provider would be taking a very big risk in terms of advancing credit to this consumer by saying that we do not know your behavior as a consumer because you do not have any history whatsoever. So those are the type of things that education goes both ways. It's not just the younger generation, but across the spectrum in having consumers understand their rights as well as their obligations in terms of how to manage their credits and any other contracts or financial services that they need to undertake.
I thank you for that, Njabulo, because as much as cash is king, I mean, it is really. If we could really buy everything in cash, we would. And I always say this because people think in my workshops that there's nothing wrong with credit. And you get people saying, what? What do you mean there's nothing wrong with credit? But we have to remember that it is because of our behavior that we think that credit is such a bad thing. And because of that, now you are over indebted, and obviously you're having all the sleepless nights simply because you used the tool that was meant to help you and you used it in the wrong manner, and now it's giving you stress instead of solving your problems. Now, looking at the time, and I wish we had so much more time because I've got so much that I want to ask, but I just want us each of us basically to just state what the process is in logging a complaint with your office. Just explain the complaints process to say where does it begin. Yes, we understand that it starts with the financial institution, but how long do you give them for them before a consumer can then approach an ombuds office for assistance? And I will start if I will start again in alphabetical order. If Emmanuel can just explain it, and then we will go in that order, and then after that we'll go to the Q&A session.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So as you mentioned, once a complaint's got to a place where they are frustrated because they're not getting the the service that they want, or they don't believe that they're not being treated fairly, they come to the office, they lodge a complaint. We have various platforms in which they can do that. They can go onto our website. There's a page for them to log an online dispute on that platform. They can give us a call and chat to one of our call center agents, and they can be sent a complaint application form, which they can fill in and then email back to us, or get it to us in whatever way they can, via courier or mail, or it's all up to them. And also, I mean, they can log a telephonic complaint as well, where our call center agents will assist them in logging the complaint. Once it's been logged, it'll be captured. The case number will be sent to them. We then go through our referral process, where we send it to the bank, and we notify them of the case that's been formally logged with our office. We'll give them 15 working days within which to respond to it. If they've already, if it's been, if they've tried to resolve it already internally before it's come to our office, then they will let us know that that process has occurred, and then we go straight to the formal stage if we believe there's still a formal case. But if not, then they'll be given their 15 days within which to either try assist the complainant, or respond to our office and let us know why they've taken the position that they've had. And once the referral process is over, then it will then be sent to an adjudicator who will have a look at it. We generally try and resolve the case within sort of 6 weeks of it being given to an adjudicator.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that. And I will immediately move over to the credit ombud. If Njabulu, you could just quickly explain exactly how long does it take for a consumer really who's already logged a complaint, who now probably has a complaint with their credit provider. When can they approach the credit ombud for assistance?
Okay, thanks, KP. I think as mentioned previously by Emmanuel, that in our office as well, we usually want the consumer to start and try and resolve the dispute internally with that credit provider. In the event that they're not satisfied with the outcome, then they can approach our office. So in approaching our office, they can do so telephonically by logging the complaint. So one of our contact center agents will assist them in logging that complaint with us in any of the official languages. Alternatively, the consumer can send an SMS to us, and then they'll receive a call back from our contact center agents in order to assist them to lodge that complaint. They can also lodge it via our website, or they can now send us an email in order to lodge that complaint. And then once that complaint is verified that yes, we do have jurisdiction, and it gets allocated to one of the case managers or legal advisors, it will then move forward we will then forward that complaint to the credit provider, who will have that 10 business days in order to provide our office with a comprehensive response in terms of what the complainant has advised. We'll thereafter investigate that complaint. Depending on what response we've received, we'll have further engagements with either the credit provider or the consumer themselves in order to try to ascertain all the facts based on the complaint and the response received. And then we generally try to have a turnaround time of closing matters or finalizing matters in 60 business days. But obviously, when matters are a bit complex, it might take longer to resolve the matter. But at all times, we do try and keep the consumers and the credit providers informed of where we are in the process, and try to give them as many updates as possible until resolution of the complaint.
Thank you very much. And then now, with you, Mashita, with the face ombud, if at all I come to your office then as or rather, like I said, I've got a complaint. Do I immediately, if at all I've logged my complaint with my service provider, and after 2 days or a week or so, can I immediately just approach the face ombud if I've got a complaint, if at all they're not resolving it in like 2 weeks? Or how long does it take before I can actually approach the face ombud?
The process is more or less similar to in most of these ombuds offices. Basically, in terms of the rules for this office, the service provider, financial services provider, they have 6 weeks in which to look at your complaint. Remember the process, the process that was explained previously by many other of my colleagues here, that you firstly start with the institution or the person that you're complaining against to try and resolve your complaint. So in terms of the proceedings, that person has 6 weeks to look at your complaint and try and resolve it with you. And then if the complaint is not resolved within that period of 6 weeks, then you can approach our office. It's important to keep records in writing when you do when you engage in this kind of a process, so that you have proof that I brought this matter to this financial institution, but I did not get help, or maybe they've given you their response, and then from there we can be able to accept your complaint and look at the response and engage the respondent in that case. From there on, it's a matter of the respondent being given a period of 2 weeks in which to reply to us to clarify certain points that we may feel that your complaint has merits on. And once that has been, the response has been received thereafter, we will then communicate that response within a period of 30 days. We can then give you an opportunity to make further submissions or any comments that you would like to make before we can actually make it a further analysis or a decision on that matter. Should the matter be proceeded with by our office in that we feel that an award needs to be made in that case, then we proceed and engage in terms of Section 27(4) of the FICE Act with the respondent in that matter, and bring points that we feel that they need to be addressed. And if they are not addressed within that communication, then the Ombud would then advise that a determination is imminent, and should the respondent still feel that they haven't done anything wrong, and then the Ombud would then make a determination which is legally binding, as it has same value as a decision issued by a court of law, had the matter been in court in that, because we are a statutory Ombud as well. So that's in short how a case would pan out in our office. If we have made a decision, maybe you feel you are not accepting, the process would then be you have an opportunity to approach the tribunal, the financial tribunal that will then re-look at the case and try and see if maybe the Ombud in this case has not done things correctly, or maybe they've not looked at certain aspects in your complaint, before you can actually take it further to another, or maybe to court.
Wow, thank you for that. And Mashita says, in short, that's basically how it's done. But can I also have just quickly, Vuyo to also just quickly explain the process, and then lastly, it will be just Peter to just explain their process to us quickly. Yes, we are over to you.
Okay, thank you. You may submit your complaint in any of the official languages. Before you submit the complaint to our office, you must first contact the insurer. If the matter remains unresolved, then you can refer your complaint to our office. You can submit your complaint online via our website, but we also have a telephonic and a walk-in service where the complainant can come into our office to lodge the complaint. Once your complaint has been received by our office, you will receive an acknowledgement letter from our office. We will ask the insurer to respond to your complaint, and we give the insurer 6 weeks. After the 6 weeks, you will also, as a consumer, be given an opportunity to submit your comments. Once our investigation has been finalized, we make a ruling or either we make a recommendation. As previously said, if the complainant is not happy with our ruling, they can take the matter further to the court of law. But our rulings are binding to our insurers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nkuna?
Thanks, Kabelo. I think I don't want to repeat because the offices tend to work more or less along the same lines. The few points I would just like to emphasize are the following. One, the ombud system is based on trying to keep things as simple as possible. So although we have guidelines that we have in place for having complaints registered and processed, etc., we are not very strict in terms of forcing people to do things in a particular way. For example, we would prefer, and I suspect this probably holds for all the offices, that the complaint, or rather the complainant, must have first approached the service provider in question. But if that hasn't happened for whatever reason, we are not going to send you our way, at least from our office's perspective. What we will do is simply grant the insurer a little bit more time to respond, a little bit more time to deal directly with you, the complainant, and see if the matter can be resolved that way. So ordinarily, we would allow the insurer 14 days to respond to a complaint. In the instance that the insurer indicates that it was not aware of this matter being an issue at all, then an additional 7 days will be allowed for the insurer to investigate, liaise with the complainant directly, and if possible, have the matter resolved. And of course, if that doesn't happen, the further investigation process will unfold, where upon receipt of the answer from the insurer, we will look into the matter and see if we can make a preliminary finding. Some of the matters are fairly straightforward. Let's say, for argument's sake, it's about you claiming when you didn't pay your premium, and therefore you can't really claim because you need to pay your premium before you can claim. We will tell you, look, you didn't pay, and therefore you are not entitled to enjoy the benefits, and that might be the end of the matter. But in other instances, you could then come back and say, no, the reason why I didn't pay was because my bank didn't honor the debit order, and then that changes things, and we engage a little bit to get more information and evidence, and depending on where the matter ends up, we will make a decision in favor of either of the parties. Alternatively, it might not even be possible to make a decision in favor of either of the parties, because we sometimes come across matters involving material disputes of fact, where the one party says the one thing and the other a completely different and conflicting thing, in which case then you need to basically have these people subjected to cross-examination, a process that is only available to the courts and other similar forums, but not to our office. And in that instance, we would then refer you to this other alternative forum or the court. Our decisions, as stated previously, are binding, but only on the insurer, not on the consumer. And there are also escalation processes relating to service issues. So if you're not happy with the matter that I'm handling, and you want somebody else to look at it, or a second opinion, there are provisions for things like that. And these culminate in an appeal, for which one would have to start off by making an application for leave to appeal. And if that is approved, then you follow the process accordingly. And I think the last thing that I would just like to add there is Although we have the desire to have matters resolved soonest, and in our case, the longest reasonable period that we are looking at is 6 months. If it goes beyond 6 months, there must really be a problem, or it must be a very complex matter. But it depends on how long the parties respond whenever we require information and evidence. It also depends on the complexity of the matter. So we don't have a specific period within which a matter would be resolved. But I would urge any complainant to just make sure that if you are not happy with the process, it's taking too long, or whatever the case may be, engage with us. We have processes in place to make sure that, for example, if a matter has fallen through the cracks, we can then dig it up and make sure that it gets the attention it deserves. And one last caution. I think sometimes people become very aggressive, and I'm probably speaking on behalf of all the ombudsmen here. If you become too aggressive in conducting your matter, you may divert energies away from dealing with the real issues in dispute and getting people to assist you, because now I'm managing you as a complainant instead of managing the complaint itself. And therefore, just express what it is you're unhappy with, and the process will deal with the issues, and that tends to assist in getting the matter resolved soonest as well. And I thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Peter. I like that last comment that you mentioned, because it's also very important. But ladies and gentlemen, that does actually bring us to the end of our session. Unfortunately, we could have extended it, but then we know that people are quite busy. But thank you so much for remaining until the very end of our session. And most importantly, I think that what we want to actually highlight is the fact that when you land at any of our offices, don't think that you are lost. If at all we cannot assist, if one of our offices cannot assist, just know that we would be able to then refer your matter to the other Ombud office that would be able to assist you. And I see that all the questions that we've had in the chat box have already been responded to. Unless somebody has got another comment that they would like to add, or a question that they may have forgotten, you may just raise your hand, pose your question. But if we don't have anything else, then we will bring our session to the end. These are on your screens. We have the email, the website, the websites to all the Ombud offices. If you have any query that you would like to pose to any of the offices, please do make use of our websites that have all of our contact details and the processes that we follow to make it simpler for the consumer. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and have yourselves a wonderful Money Smart week. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Goodbye. Thank you.